cookies are really irresistible. The cookies call for buckwheat flour, which heightens the pleasantly bitter flavors of coffee and cocoa nibs, making them a deliciously grown-up treat. Start with your dry ingredients: 1½ cups of all-purpose flour and 3/4 of a cup of buckwheat flour. Notice the difference in color. Buckwheat is sort of a grayish brown, and buckwheat is not a grain, it is a pseudo-grain. Comes from the seeds of a plant that looks kind of like the seeds of rhubarb. So there's 3/4 of a cup. Oh, by the way, just start creaming your butter. 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 pound, at room temperature, with 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. Into your dry ingredients, 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of good espresso powder. And when I say good, I mean high quality, something that you like the flavor of, the same that you would use in your chocolate Diablo cake. So I'm mixing all the dry ingredients together, and 1½ teaspoons of vanilla right into the sugar and butter. You can scrape down your bowl. And now you can add your dry ingredients. There are no eggs, there's no liquid, just basically butter and different kinds of flour and cocoa nibs. You could make this by hand, but because it's such a heavy dough, it would be a little hard to stir by hand. Looking good. Now you can sprinkle in 1/3 of a cup of cocoa nibs, pure chocolate. So the cocoa nibs are the center of the cocoa bean. After it's fermented, these little cocoa nibs are what's inside the hull of the cocoa bean. And that's your dough. Pretty easy. This has to be chilled in a log and then sliced into individual cookies. And it is a dark color. The log should be formed about 12 inches long and 1½ inches in diameter. You want it completely solid, because when you slice it, you want it to slice in a lovely fashion. This is about right. Roll it up in parchment and chill. It should refrigerate for at least an hour, and of course, you can keep it overnight up until a day or so. Unwrap the dough. Once it's chilled, then form your cookies. So put that on a baking sheet and chill. So here is our chilled dough. I would cut the end off, and then you should be able to get about 30 cookies. I'm going to just mark this. About a little less than 1/3 of an inch thick. And slice carefully through. And I like it because it is an unusual color. If it breaks a little bit like that, don't worry, just kind of press it back together. And get these on your baking sheet. They have to be placed about 1 inch apart. Make sure your oven is preheated to 325 degrees. And the rack should be in the upper and lower third of the oven. Use a very sharp knife and get these right in. They only cook for 13 to 15 minutes. Very fast, because these are small cookies. So when the cookies come out of the oven, just transfer them to a wire rack. Let them cool completely. Then put them in your cookie jar. Put them on a tray like that, or on a plate in your pantry, wherever